Mike from California asks about MaxForce Complete for fire ants. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of the Pest Geek podcast. This is Frank Hernandez, your Pest Geek. I'm having a marvelous week. I'm having a marvelous Monday. I don't know about you, but most people don't like Mondays. I look forward to Mondays because Mondays I get to record this podcast. Monday I get to share with a lot of people what I experience. Other people are starting to share with us what they're experiencing, and it's becoming great. Just like Mike from California, who has a question this week about MaxForce Complete for fire ants. If my voice sounds a little off, I'm just woke up this morning with a raspy throat, and it's kind of hard when you got to record, but it's awesome because, I just took a little bit of honey and it feels a little better, but it just sounds a little different. So, if you're experiencing that, just know that I'm not going through puberty. I just have a raspy throat. But if you want to ask your questions on the air, or you would like to be a guest on the show and you've got something to contribute, love to have you. Give us a call, 707-395-7378. Leave a recorded message. You can do it 24/7, any day of the week. It's totally free. And share what you were experiencing, or maybe a question or a comment about the podcast. You'd like to be a guest on the show. It'd be great. Come aboard. Also, I'd like to give a special shout out to Lamps Pest Solutions in Lexington, South Carolina. He writes on Facebook, I just found your podcast and have to say I love it so far. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Well, miracles do happen, folks. Somebody actually likes the podcast and they actually listened to it and they shared it. So that is amazing. Hey, if you want to follow us on Facebook, also on Twitter, you can look for Pest Geek Podcast, all one word. And we're also on the World Wide Web at pestgeekpodcast.com. You can check out the podcast we have there. We're putting some tools and tips, additional stuff on the website that you probably will miss on social media, as Twitter is like, newsflash. So if you stay off of Twitter for like 10 minutes, the world has passed you by. But there you can find it in one place at pestgeekpodcast.com. Also, I want to remind you that this podcast is sponsored by Audible. If you like listening to great content, you're going to love audiobooks. Now, I took a break from Audible for about, I just put my subscription on hold because I said, I've got about 80 books. I want to go through some of them again and listen to them again. There's some things I glean, and every time I go through it, I pick up new stuff and say, I didn't realize that was there. So I took a break from it, but, I heard, I was listening to another podcast, and he mentions this great book on statistics. And I said, I just got so tempted. I had to go and order the book and download it because I'm just an audio junkie. So, if you are the same way, you can get a free book download and a free month by going to audibletrial.com/pestgeek. And if you don't have it, just in the podcast, if you pull up the notes, there's a link to it there. And it greatly helps out the podcast, cover some of the costs of doing this. And we do greatly appreciate it. So thank you for that. Also, the tech tip of the week. If you're in the field and you're trying to figure out or you're trying to do some cost analysis to figure out what is your profitability on certain chemicals, because some chemicals, in the case like, we're talking about fire ants, a product like Top Choice. If you have a wide field and you need to do a big area because it's just a severe problem, and you want to use a product like Top Choice, how do you know if you're selling it at a profitable price? And if it compared to every other pest control that you do? Well, there's a great little markup tool, a markup calculator at calculatorsoup.com that I found, and I use it for those special jobs that I got to figure out, is it even worth for me to do it? Because it's just the product is so expensive, and you just got to decide whether it's profitable or not. You can do it right in the field. It has a little app. You can just download that app. It's actually a whole website, but you can take a specific calculator and then save it on your iPhone or your Android, and then you just basically click to it and then go to it. It's at calculatorsoup.com. It's under calculators financial. Actually, it's calculator/financial/markup-calculator PHP. If you just Google calculator soup, all one word, and type in markup calculator, you'll come across it. Great little tool. I use it all the time in the field. It's totally free, and it takes the work out of you figuring out. All you have to do is you put in the cost that you have for the product, the margin you would like to get, and then it gives you the price that you should charge for that. And then also it gives you your percentage of gross margin that you're making on that product. So it lets you do a couple of analysis all at one time. Great little tool that I use all the time, and it's awesome. Now, we're going to go get to our podcast where Mike from California asked the following question.
Hey, Pet Geek. Hello, Pet Geek. My name's Mike. I'm relatively new to pest control, and down here in Southern California, we're starting to see a little bit more activity with the fire ant because of the drought. Now, a lot of the coworkers that I have say that they use MaxForce Complete. However, the company I work for is no longer purchasing it because of the fact that it's hard to come by. So what would you recommend using for fire ants if you don't have access to MaxForce?
Okay, that is a great question, Mike. And a couple of things that when I first heard the voicemail, that you mentioned that they're having trouble finding it and getting it. As far as I know, Bayer does not have a distribution problem, and Bayer does not have a manufacturing problem right now. So if you're not able to get it, that raises a couple of flags for me. Number one is the product registered to be used in California? Because if distributors don't have it, usually it's because they can't sell it or because it's just not a product that they can sell readily. So that raised a couple of flags for me when I heard the question, and I immediately go to the label at that point. And I looked at the label, and the label has some really funky wording exclusive to California only. And when I look at the label, it says clearly, do not use on other non-crop areas in California. So I scratched my head and I said, what the heck does this mean? Do not use on other non-crop areas in California. And, it made my head hurt because I said, is it not available in California? You shouldn't use it in California. Non-crop areas, other non-crop areas would imply any other area that you have. So I called Bayer and I asked this specific question about the use of it in California. And the interpretation of what is said on that label is that it on the label, it says you can use it in restaurant, food service facility, residential, interior, exterior. Well, in the state of California, all those areas that are listed on the label, it cannot be used in. I guess only in crop areas can you use this product. So that is right there a big problem because people, and this is what's happening, and it happens down here, it happens pretty much everywhere. You find out about a product, you want to use it, and you can't find it, so you go online and you get it shipped to you. Well, they can ship it to you, but doesn't necessarily mean that you can use it. And even though then the second thing as I looked at is I went into California to see if the product is registered. Well, the product is registered to be used in California, but according to this label, you can only use it in crop areas for fire ant control or for any other thing that's on the label. Fire ants are on the label, and it has specific instructions for how to use it for fire ants. But you really can't use it anywhere in residential, outdoor. You can't use it anywhere, this product in California. Now, I'm assuming that by your call that you're talking about red imported fire ant, which is a big problem throughout the entire southern part of the U.S., from Florida to California. It is in some areas, it is very serious. Other areas, not so serious. Down here in South Florida, hasn't been a big issue. It's pretty much under control. I get very, very few problems with imported fire ant. We don't go into a property and there's just mounds and mounds. I used to get that in the past, and if it was that drastic that we couldn't get it under control, we basically had to use a product like Top Choice, which I used once or twice. It's got too many restrictions, and it's just very, very expensive, and a lot of people can't afford it. So we never used it again, just on that one job that was just so severe that people, spraying was never going to solve it, and we used it there. But if you go to the website, if you go to pestgeekpodcast.com and you're in California and you want to know if a product is registered in California that you want to use, I have a link to a zip file of every product that has been registered. So first of all, you got to make sure it's registered to be used. There are products here that I wanted to use, and they were Armory listed, they were organic, they were natural, but they weren't listed in Florida and registered, and therefore the supplier couldn't sell them to me. So I basically had to wait on those products until they got it registered, and then they were able to sell it to me. So that's one of the key things. So there's a link to it. It's a really long, .gov.this./that. So there's a link to it if you want to get the link and download that zip file. Also, you can check the registered active ingredients, because the product name might be registered, but the active ingredient is probably registered too, or maybe it isn't. When I looked, I was looking for a label on this. I managed to come across a different label, maybe a little older, that hasn't been updated, and it was from Washington State University, where it clearly says, that particular label says not for use in California. So that's one of the challenges that you have, is with products not being registered, labeled, or not approved to be used in that state. Now, having said that, then what can you use? What can you do? There's a couple of good products on the market that I've used, all of them pretty much. I've tried every product. I've carried it for dealing with fire ants. And since I'm a targeted pest control company, I use targeted products. It just works a whole lot better for me when I can do that versus relying on a product like MaxForce Complete, which, by the way, is a phenomenal product. I use it for exterior ant control around our properties. And if I do an initial service and there's a heavy ant population, usually we'll have, here we have white-footed ant, ghost ants, crazy ant, and those type of ants are, it works really, really well. Gets me a really good, quick knockdown. Now, here's the thing that you got to know about baits and exterior baits. And I don't care really who manufactures it. There's a lot of companies out there that say our products will last, our bait will last 90 days. Well, it might if you're probably in Arizona, okay? Every product is going to degrade one way or another, whether it's by water, UV light, the soil, something is going to degrade that product. And what I found with MaxForce is I know that if it's going to rain, and it's going to rain within an hour, I'm not going to apply that. If I can know that I can get at least maybe 1 to 2 days of that product working in the field, because here's what we deal with. In Southern California, it's a little different. It's a lot drier, less water. As a matter of fact, you guys are going through a severe drought. And here in South Florida, we're getting, in the summertime, we'll get 40 inches of rain in a 3-month span. It's raining every single day. It'll rain for hours. It'll be at just 4 inches of rain downpour. And if I put that product out, it's not going to work. I mean, it's not going to work as effectively as if it was out there for a couple of days to get better use of it. So, that's one of the things to consider. I know a lot of people do drenching and use a lot of drenches to deal with fire ants. I don't like drenching, and I've drenched before, and it's like You got to put down 2 gallons, an ounce of this product. It's like really, I mean, you putting down a fire mound, an ounce of the product that normally you would use that ounce to do an entire perimeter spray around a house where you get paid, anywhere between $35 to $65 for that job. And here you are pouring down an ounce of chemical down a fire ant mound. It's just because it's labeled doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best use of that product or the best application of that product. Second, you're going through a drought. The starting to use water to do drenching in mounds or injecting mounds, it's just not a good use of your water. So the best thing still for fire ants and the most effective thing is baits. And there's a couple of products that I've used and that I really like. One of them is the DuPont Advion Fire Ant Bait Indoxacarb. It is labeled for use in California. I didn't find anything on the label that said I couldn't use it in California. It is registered. I found that it is registered. The active ingredient is registered. So you should be good with DuPont Advion bait to be able to use that in your application. Now, that is a chemical product. The other one that I really like that I've used is the Extinguish, but now they have the Extinguish Plus. And the Extinguish basically was an IGR, or is an IGR, with the methoprene. And they added the hydromethanol on the Extinguish Plus. So basically, it's the same active ingredient that you have in MaxForce Complete, but it is at a much lower dosage, which is a 0.365 with the S-methoprene, which is the insect growth regulator, the IGR. Now, one of the things might be is because of the high level of that active ingredient, which in the MaxForce, it's 1%. And this is about 2/3 less, at 0.365. So it does a great job. It works fine. I've used it. I have no issues. What I do is if anytime I'm using a brand new product, okay, and I'm using it on a target pest that I haven't used it before, and just because it's on the label, I'm just not going to assume that it's just going to work a certain way. So what I do is I go out, I put it out, and then I just make a note to myself to follow that up in a week. If it's dead in a week, I'm good. And I tell the customer, I'm going to be back in a week. Check out and make sure it's dead and not a problem. Because I want to make sure that it's actually working. If I put it on 20 mounds on a property, I want to come back and check all those mounds, make sure they're dead. And then after that, I'm pretty sure that it's going to work every time. I don't have to come back every single time to make sure. But you put out a product and your customer's calling you back saying, hey, I still got, or maybe you have new mounds, which is another problem with fire ants. So that's what I would do. The other one that you can use is Ascend Fire Ant Bait. It used to be prescription treatment. The manufacturer put BASF bought them out. The active ingredient is abamectin. It's one of those products that I think people may not be carrying, or they might have discontinued. Some suppliers don't have it. So you might want to check up on that. But there's Ascend. Abamectin is a fermented fungal product. It works really well. I've used it, never had a problem. The other one is the MaxForce FC Fire Ant Bait using the fipronil. Okay. And that's the original product that they had. And that still works great. I've had no problem with that. So you have 4 great products that you can use for fire ant control. And I don't think you should have any problem getting it. You should be able to get one of these if you're in Southern California. So other than that, I've got a really good link also to a document on imported fire ants. If you're in the north, you've never seen an imported fire ant probably, but if you live down all the way from Florida, along that border, the bottom, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, going Arizona, just the basic southern part of the U.S., all the way to Southern California. I don't think they have them in Northern California. But you can get it there's a link from the Florida department here, the entomology department, and at University of Florida, and it has a really, really good document on imported fire ants. And that way, you can get all of the information you need. Thank you so much for the question, taking the time to get this, because I think this really does help a lot of people to what's happening in their area, what's happening in their specific niche. I'm all the way in South Florida. My experience with pest control is in South Florida. It's different than, if you go out in the middle of Arizona and you're dealing with scorpions and spiders, totally different animal. So it's really neat to look across the U.S. and find specific problems that are happening that are not happening in my area. And it just helps you stay informed. It helps you understand what other people are going through, and being able to share that information is just awesome. So thank you, Mike, for calling us in and asking us the question. And tell your friends, stop using MaxForce Complete, especially in Southern California. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.